My Four Girls. It was with a touch of reticence that I approached this chapter, mostly because, with the enormity of importance my four daughters hold in my life, I was fearful of not immediately recalling a flood of meaningful details about their arrival in our family, or significant details of their young years, and so many special times. As it worked out, the four names for boys we expected all had to be changed upon the initial appearance, as each turned out to be a girl. We had decided not to lunge forward with gender identity technology of the day and just be surprised at the time of birth with each child. As we prepared for our first child, we were quite undecided how to decorate the new baby's room. Should we paint the baby blue walls for the boy or pastel pink for a daughter? We compromised with a neutral yellow, which would be suitable for either. A friend had knitted a sweet baby blanket with hints of pink and blue woven in. All the bases were covered. One pre-birth story I recalled was the friend that came over for an informal visit one afternoon and promptly plopped his sweaty beer can down on the yet unused wooden high chair that we treasured. Our look of consternation immediately registered with this very practical father of two. He said, "Are you going to use this chair for a baby?" He explained that it would receive much more sloppy abuse than a bit of beverage condensation, and encouraged us to get used to it. Humorous in retrospect. I had not been teaching very long at Lookout Valley High School when our first child was due. I was trying to arrange and balance some time away from school for delivery using vacation days, sick leave, or whatever had to be juggled. The school secretary chuckled as she saw me squirming over the situation. She said I had personal leave for such rare occasions. That was a relief. I remember our excited and novice days and hours just prior to the first birth. Faye went into labor, and over the next 2 days she experienced the trials of 28 hours of labor. Finally, the delivery was at hand, the first of all natural birth. Such miracles that all come together at the time of a baby's arrival. I remember being overwhelmed with emotion at the sight of that precious girl as tears welled up in my eyes. My mother was with us, as was the midwife and birthing attendants. I was invited to cut the cord during the process, so I suppose I was good for at least something. We were rank amateurs at birthing babies, so I was sergeant at arms with the hospital staff, being sure nothing went against our wishes and that they didn't mix up our daughter with another child in the maternity ward. I stayed with her every moment during her initial bath and through the details as they moved her around a few times. We didn't fully realize we could have relaxed and depended a little more on the very capable staff. After all, they had been through this hundreds and hundreds of times. We decided our home was the better place to be, so after Faye had completed delivery and our daughter was determined to be 100% in good condition, we headed home, arriving home just 6 hours after delivery. Lesson learned. There is no reason for such rushing out of the professional facilities when such wonderful help and rest for the stressed mother are right at hand. Nonetheless, we were at home with our precious, fully functional daughter, Charity Elizabeth. She was not to be a helpless blob of unfocused humanity. As I took her out on the porch and sat in the bench swing, she sat up, fully aware and looking around to take in the world. None of that floppy head stuff that all the parents warned us about in supporting the baby's head, etc. She was ready to take on the world. My mother was of enormous help during the first several days, with the new little one requiring just a little more attention than Faye was up to providing right away. We coined a new term that week, nanny diaper. Charity's new digestive system was working just fine and pushed the newborn diapers and clothing to the limits. The next story I remember was several months down the road. Charity had mastered her crib and walking. She was a little difficult to get down for a nap. We would put her down and pat her backside until she drifted off to sleep. Unfortunately, if we happened to step on a squeaky floorboard as we departed the baby's room, she was immediately wide awake. After what was usually a shorter nap than we anticipated, we would hear the bump of her feet hitting the floor after climbing the rail wall of her crib, and subsequent thump, thump, thump of her running toward the occupied part of the house to be with us. She was really something, seeming to be weeks and months ahead of schedule in development. The school year was underway, so I was back to full-time day schedule. We were adjusting to the new number of family members. After a couple of weeks, my mother returned to Montgomery and we were on our own. The years passed quickly and a couple of address changes were negotiated. One daddy story I recall was pushing Charity in the tire swing in our front yard on a 20-foot rope. The arc of the swing was large and actually extended through much of the yard and over the edge of the retaining wall and barely over the street. She had iron courage, or at least seemed to be of strong nerve. She flew through the air with the greatest of ease. Not long after those days, an older child was visiting and sat on the tire swing. With minimal movement, the rope snapped right in two pieces. How the Lord had looked after us and not allowed that to break in full swing 15 feet in the air over the pavement, we have been ever thankful. There were a couple of more early year stories. One was the afternoon we taped cloth diapers to Charity's elbows and knees and put on a crash helmet and headed down the drive for the first attempts at bicycle riding. By golly, she picked it right up and was quickly successful. I'll never forget that padded package of childhood. A bit later, Charity accompanied me to a dress rehearsal of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and chorus. We were doing the Verdi Requiem, as I recall. I dutifully stretched out a blanket for her in the audience area and took my seat on stage. After the rehearsal, she met Mr. Shaw and was pleased when he commented, "You sure are pretty." When asked if she enjoyed the rehearsal, she replied, "It was real nice until the chorus started screaming." Oh, I guess there were incidental stories about attempting to camp out in the backyard early one spring, awaking the next morning to frost in our hair and on the blankets in the open air. The other camp out was when the dog came by and licked our bare toes sticking out of the tent. Some pretty funny memories. And see, that completely skipped over the once in a lifetime opportunity Charity had to sing in Paris and London with the Chattanooga Girls Choir. It's impossible to encapsulate 10,000 details in a few pages. The grand master story of childhood was the slave labor. We needed to fill in a low spot in the back corner of the yard to level it for a fence installation. Our neighbor had piles of red clay available for us to use. We just needed to move the wheelbarrow loads down the street about 75 feet and up the steep hill to the back of the lot. The loads were probably well over 100 pounds. We managed to tie a rope to the wheelbarrow and hitch Charity and Emily to the rope, pulling it up the hill while I drove and guided the handles. Over many days, we managed to move nearly a tandem truckload of red clay, one wheelbarrow at a time. It was 3.5 years later that baby number two was due. Timing was actually planned. Faye was fully recovered from bearing our firstborn, and Charity was growing and maturing in high style. Faye had begun early labor, but we went on to church as it was our custom and as I was music director for our local congregation. I told the pastor of the imminent situation, and being the humorist that he was, he took a show of hands from the congregation whether we would make it to the end of the service before needing to dash to the birthing center. For many weeks we had assured Charity that the new baby would be coming along just any time now. About halfway through the service, time was drawing very near, and we needed to get a move on things. I gathered our family gear from around our seats, alerted the pastor, and moved a few seats down to tell Charity it was time for the new baby to come. She sensed urgency in my voice, but she insisted, "Not now, just any time now." With minor persuasion, she agreed to come with me and leave the church service. Emily's arrival was considerably quicker than Faye's first birth. All went well at the birthing center, and we were old pros at this task now. We were a bit disturbed at some well-meaning church members who stopped by the hospital following church to pay us a visit, right in the middle of labor. Of course, those visits did not take place. This time we were much smarter than our first experience. Rather than rush home within a few hours, Faye kicked back and took the evening as leisurely as possible, resting, relaxing, and sleeping through the night in the hospital. Miss Opal arrived several days in advance to prepare the way. Unfortunately, she reacted to some of her medication and spent several days either in bed or moving just below radar. Later, Faye's mom arrived, and in efforts to help, she attempted to cut the grass, which ended in a foot injury, putting her out of commission. Faye rose to the occasion and was able to function at a self-sustaining level. Emily was perhaps our best bargain birth. The combination of our insurance outpatient status left us with a final medical bill of $10. If we had known that, we could have gone for twins. We discovered with Emily that each child arrives with some level of predetermined character and personality. Where Charity was a dynamic firstborn personality and equipped to take on the world, Emily was of a quiet, sweet nature and mostly patient for life events to open at a normal pace. My life was accelerating rapidly in those years with teaching responsibilities, involvement in Atlanta Symphony Chorus schedules, and leading church choir ministry. So, unfortunately, many day-to-day activities and specific family memories have become cloudy. One home event, which turned out to be the tip of a lifetime musical iceberg, was Emily's first spontaneous living room recital. One evening we were relaxing with family time when Emily picked up a piece of sheet music and began an extended vocal solo of descending arpeggios on the ah syllable for several minutes. She set some upper volume level records and demonstrated an excellent ear for in-tune singing. She seemed to enjoy and appreciate the audience attention and approval. That quality survives to this day. Her musical talents were enhanced and magnified throughout her early years through singing, piano, and a little later guitar mastery. Emily was always such pleasant company, full of love, happiness, and sparkle. Once, during some furniture movement, a half roll of postage stamps were discovered plastered to the back of her dresser, much in the style of children's toy stickers. When confronted, there was mild denial and moments of silence, followed by a flood of guilty tears and sorrow. What a beautiful heart, full of desire to do the right thing. To be sure, I do not omit a very important period a little later in adolescent years, involved the summer in which the television was put away in the closet. Charity and Emily searched their creative forces and became a team of composer, lyricists, songwriters, and performers. Those talents were to blossom fully in the years to come. One Emily story that slipped in so quietly one afternoon and has affected me more toward Emily's early, delicate demeanor was the afternoon we visited a friend's house in Cleveland, Tennessee. The large land lot hosted a number of horses and a lovely home with a nice swimming pool. Fay, Charity, Emily, and I were enjoying the pool and good conversation when I suddenly realized Emily was bobbing in the shallow end of the pool and not making the motions of swimming. She had waded down the steps into the pool and breathed in just enough water to enter the early stages of drowning. Fay jumped into the pool and pulled her to the side. We administered some rather amateur respiration procedures, managing to pump some water from her lungs, after which she began coughing and breathing, and she was back to normal in a very short time. I have never forgotten how fragile and frail life is, and how it can slip away in just seconds so quietly. That event has remained in the back of my mind and left fragments of occasional fear of losing a child. During Emily's high school years, Pastor Grady Davidson of Lookout Valley Presbyterian Church, Grady approached me one day at school and asked if I knew of any available organists. I told him the only one I knew offhand was Emily, who had been studying pipe organ with Judy Glass at Southern Adventist University. Grady hired her, and she served the church for several years through the time she began a full-time teaching career following college. One memorable and family classic statement happened one day when Emily purchased her first laptop computer, which was quite an acquisition for our family. She sat on the couch with the computer in her lap, and all the family gathered around, especially Rosalie and Stephanie. She had earned funds for the computer from her church music position. She demonstrated several functions of the computer, took a deep breath, and proclaimed, "That, my sisters, is pipe organ," indicating that her pipe organ study, practice, and work at the church had provided the funds for a very nice, practical, and coveted device. When Emily reached the age of 3.5 and Charity was 7, daughter number 3 arrived. Stephanie Ann was yet another completely new package of character, personality, and talents. Each arrival was a family affair, and we were all gathered with Fay as she began her third all-natural birth delivery. Fay decided this time not to invite either mother for the days surrounding the new arrival. Our young cousin, Jennifer, was available for a visit, so she came on Fay's due date, prepared to stay a few days. 2 weeks came and went, and Fay was late again. Jennifer gave up and returned home, and the following day Fay went into labor. A third and blessed delivery moved along remarkably well, and suddenly there was Stephanie. I've always thought she favored the gene pool from Dad's mother's side of the family. They said Sarah, great grandmother Hammett, was no bigger than a minute. Stephanie has always been a little more toward the petite size. She seemed to be a miniature nuclear generator, full of energy and not desiring that anything escape her attention, even from the earliest days. We attended the Worldwide Church of God in those days, where children attended services with the family. If they became agitated or noisy, one parent would take them out until they relaxed and would fall asleep. Stephanie had the gift of alertness and could last for an entire 2 hour service wide awake. One of her most memorable traits was that she enjoyed being a fashion queen, trying on up to 20 outfits in a row from her dresser and tossing each unused garment on the floor. Sometimes she would layer on 5 or 6 outfits at a time. I guess she has remained our most sensitive family member to the world of fashion and decor styles. She tended to be a fairly picky eater as a youngster. She had a gift for taking required bites of various servings, slipping away from the table, and disposing the undesired food in another room. Stephanie's musical talents were rapidly discovered, and her singing, piano playing, guitar playing, pipe organ, and songwriting gifts grew significantly through the early years. She taught herself guitar, then had a few lessons from a local guitar teacher. She played with explosive energy, much in the style of Jack Black in his School of Rock movie. Her style quickly mellowed and became useful in her songwriting. She and Emily developed quite a performing duo, singing around town and making CD recordings of their music for sale. Charity was always their go-to lyrics editor who made major contributions to their excellent basic music ideas. All of the girls were active in local and state piano festivals and competitions, always doing very well in their evaluations. Faye would begin each daughter with basic piano skills and music reading. Then, around age 6 or 7, they would graduate to a professional teacher who would elevate their skills and discipline to excellent levels of performance. The only requirement they had concerning music study was to take lessons and be musically active through their high school years. They were all active in church choirs and King's Kids at First Presbyterian Church. As the girls grew and aged, the desire to spread their wings and independence grew accordingly. One afternoon, Stephanie disappeared for some time downstairs. The next thing we knew, she had constructed a makeshift bedroom between one wall and a row of bookshelves by hanging sheets and arranging her bed and small furniture in her new residence. That lasted a while before I framed in a proper door, moved the bookcase wall over a few feet, and gave her space suitable for a young teen. The only problem was the paper thin wall separating her room from Charity's adjacent bedroom. In addition to her musical activities, she was also active in sporting events, especially long runs and races. She would often team up with one or more sisters and make a great weekend out of a local race. Very impressive for her non running father. She was also an avid bicyclist. It wasn't long into Stephanie's piano career that she landed a substantial position as pianist at a nearby Presbyterian church. It was a good income for her, great experience, and opened doors in the local music world to meet many musicians and learn aspects of operating in or running a music ministry. These skills would all be put to use in years shortly following. Steph's college years were very productive. She was an excellent student, attending the university on various scholarships and taking leading roles in all things musical. She took a social path with which I was not familiar and somewhat set against due to various reputations of some groups. She joined a sorority. All I could think of was wild parties, the wrong kind of guys, and a pathway to destruction. It was not long before I learned how wrong I was, as she prospered in so many ways as a member of Chi Omega. It turned out to be one of her best decisions during her college years. It seems that the number of children to fill a home is directed and inspired from above. 2.5 years after Stephanie's arrival, we thought just one more child would be a full family for us. Faye especially thought a fourth child would make a perfect companion and playmate for Stephanie. Rosalie Faye was soon to become our caboose. As usual, our little clan was to gather at the hospital for the birth of the next child. I believe it was the onset of contractions for Rosalie's time that created a little tension on the way to the hospital. The family had not had an evening meal, so it was decided to grab a quick burger at Central Park right along the way. After all, that would just take a minute. I pulled into the order window and called our needs. All was going well, and Faye was pacing and timing her contractions, which were already very regular. When I started sorting the order and asked who had the onions and pickles, I had taken my life in my own hands. In Faye's sternest and most demanding voice, I heard, "Get to the hospital now." Delivery time was at hand, and the food stop had frittered away the cushion of minutes. Faye was checked in, and hospital personnel made final preparations. 3 older siblings were awaiting Rosalie's birth. For a little time of entertainment, the girls requested some children's programs on the room television. In the absence of a remote control unit, I reached up to operate the controls. It was about that moment Stephanie burst into tears and shrieks of pain. I had inadvertently stepped on her hand and even rose on my tiptoes to turn the knob. Steph's pain was intense enough that her crying triggered her gag reflex, and she lost her consumed burger all over her outfit. The nurse was on the ball and immediately provided a nice pair of hospital pajamas for Stephanie, which became her favorite jammies for many months thereafter. The ride, the meal, and change of clothes was more than enough extraneous distraction. It was time for the main event. Within just a little while, labor reached full intensity, and in her nearly superhuman style, Faye delivered yet a fourth perfectly formed little girl. From the beginning, Rosalie became a world champion sweet-natured infant. The world seemed to suit her in most every way. I asked Rosie what were some of her favorite memories from younger years that involved me. Her initial brief list brought back some treasured times that had tended to slip into faded valleys of my mind. When recalled, they became so vivid and so important again. One story on her list was her enjoyment of seeing me come home from work. That time of day was such a simple, uneventful, everyday occurrence that might ordinarily totally escape notice. However, memory of the very same event in my own life remained a strong and happy time when my dad would arrive home from a day at the optical dispensary. I would run full speed and jump into his arms and rub my cheek across his scratchy 5 o'clock shadow like a peach on sandpaper. He would greet me with, "Hello, short stuff." Rosie liked watching me work in the garden. We always had a spring garden. Tilling, planting, weeding, picking, and plowing season after season. There were also times of one-on-one attention and interaction. Checker games, reading stories with some vocal inflection of character voices, or maybe just watching TV together were always pleasant times. We had a few outdoor activities that we enjoyed, with some being seasonal. In the fall, especially around Thanksgiving, we would pull out the old foam rubber football and toss it around the yard. We had a couple of lace up footballs and a diminished size that she learned to grip with her fingers on the laces and master the art of throwing a perfect spiral pass. We spent many holidays, normally Thanksgiving, with the Montgomery relatives. We would lodge at Nanny's house and enjoy a traditional weekend of turkey dinner, Macy's parade, National Dog Show, and stroll around the old neighborhood. We always walked across the front lawn of Robert E. Lee High School and picked up a couple of pockets full of freshly fallen pecans. We would enjoy cracking and picking the pecans when we returned to Bradley Drive. Early in the girl's life, I built a swing set. Rosalie especially enjoyed when I would swing her high. We would attend the Lookout Valley football games. She got a kick out of catching the miniature footballs the cheerleaders would toss into the stands. We played quite a number of checker games sporadically. I can't remember if we ventured into chess or not. Rosalie seemed to delight in characteristics we tended to share. She always remembered a time or two she wore a dress coat, much like a suit coat, which made our attire look considerably alike. Two peas in a pod. Rosie always had a tender heart of gold, and she was particularly sensitive to little things to which I never paid much attention. She always noticed my kindness to people at large and my efforts to make every individual feel special. After all, everyone is special in their own way. It registered with her that I was usually available to see her off to her jobs in the morning, and just about as often to welcome her home. I made effort to make each daughter feel special, and without a doubt, each girl is indeed very special and an occupant of their unique place in my heart. I have never been the least bit worthy to have such wonderful children, but the Lord poured out endless blessings to our family with each beautiful, talented, intelligent, perfect daughter. Life with the girls has been a combination of happy times, proud times, stressful times, inspirational times, times of comfort when life fell apart, and times of encouragement through thick and thin. One story I especially remember was the time Rosalie and I loaded up the Honda Goldwing and headed to Montgomery to begin work on residing the old homestead. The post-World War II home had been covered with asbestos shingles and later vinyl siding. It was long overdue for a renovation. She was still of single-digit age on that trip, as I remember. We had helmets for the bike ride, equipped with headsets for communication. Somewhere south of Birmingham, she had finished one conversation and promptly unplugged the electric cable from her helmet and from the bike and tossed the cable out on the interstate highway. It remains a puzzle to both of us as to why that happened. She enjoyed ripping down the old siding from the house and preparing for the new covering. I believe we ran out of time on that trip and returned to Chattanooga. It's astonishing how swiftly the eternal clock ticks away. My 4 little girls are all married ladies at this point. Middle aged has overtaken 2 and is nipping at the heels of number 3. Today, August 23rd, we celebrate our firstborn daughter's 39th birthday and the arrival of grandchild number 13 with the potential of more to come. The personalities, character, and demeanor of each girl has changed very little through the nearly 40 years since they began to arrive. They have matured beautifully and grown in Christian faith and life choices. They are the Lord's greatest gift to Faye and me. The Lord knew what He was doing when He instituted families.